Welcome to Season 2 of Finding Your Balance, a mental health podcast. I'm Tiffani Fritzsche. I'm a licensed mental health counselor, and I'm joined with my friend Kirk Fasshauer, licensed clinical social worker.
Hello,
Hi, Kirk.
hello.
So in this season, we're going to be covering a lot of topics, and the first one today is understanding the difference between a bad day and a mental health crisis.
Right. Because I think people get kind of concerned that, people have bad days. Why is it more serious than others? Well, it can be. But everybody has bad days, so it's part of having a bad day doesn't mean you necessarily need mental health counseling or intervention. It takes a little bit of time. So bad days tend to be more situational, right? You've had bad days.
Yeah.
What do you do during those days?
So a lot of times for me, I work with kids, and so one of the big things that we focus on is meeting those basic needs. Have you slept enough? Have you had a snack? Have you gone outside? And a lot of times I think for me, especially whenever I'm having a rough day, if I look at the day, I've been pretty stationary. I haven't moved a lot, but also I'm in panic mode and I'm not focusing on anything other than what's right in front of me. And I lose track of meeting those basic needs. There's a lot of things that a snack and a nap will fix, but some things do go past that. Yeah,
I've heard you say that in several trainings that you've done with me, and it's like, that is so true. A snack and a nap cures all. And as I'm getting older, I'm finding out the nap is just as important. But the bad days are situational. So examples of that, dealing with traffic, looking at your schedule, maybe getting a little overwhelmed because you've got a deadline coming up and you're not able to meet it, or you've missed it. I've looked at my calendar and gone, oh, shoot, I've missed a deadline. Or, God forbid, this tragedy should happen. You spill your coffee. I'm an avid coffee drinker. So, but those are temporary frustrations, minor annoyances, and they kind of, resolve themselves when you do self-care, the snack and the nap.
Well, and I think a lot of those, like talking about spilling your coffee, or the other examples that you gave, for me, sometimes I get this like time blindness. And so I'm all in on whatever it's in front of me. And then you notice that maybe you're running a few minutes late, right?
Right.
And then there's this panic of like, oh no, I'm late again. And so I think sometimes it's as simple as stepping back when you're not in a crisis, because when you're in a crisis, your mind is like overloaded, right? That's not the time for lectures. That's the time to just take a minute. But are there simple things that we can do to relieve the stress, to maybe solve the problem even temporarily? And so, for example, if you struggle with being on time, building in extra margin into your day to where, okay, if I know I've got to be there by this time, in my mind, I'm going to say I need to be there, 15 minutes early or something like that.
Right.
Some things cannot be fixed. And those, moments of stress or frustration or panic, they happen and they don't go away with quick fixes.
Yeah. And, the example you give of running late for an appointment is, so you run late for an appointment, what's going to be the result of that? What is the consequence, I guess, is what I'm asking. Mm-hmm. So really putting in some realistic perspective, and some of us, depending on our life experiences, have different frames of reference, which we go for. But typically with a bad day, just some self-care and time. The bad day doesn't define you. It's just a little bump in the road for that day. Mm-hmm. But when it comes to a mental health crisis, though, that's when things get much more serious. That's when you feel very overwhelmed. It's not just yes, being overwhelmed, looking at a full calendar and, oh my God, how am I going to get everything in today? And I have a deadline for something tomorrow. That can be overwhelming. Mm-hmm. That could be the start of a potential mental health crisis, but your coping mechanisms usually kick in those situations, and you do fine. It becomes that temporary bump in the road. It is when you're not able to cope, where you start to freeze. You're not going to those appointments that you should be going, and it often lasts longer. It's more like days or even weeks. So you want to watch. I mean, part of our main target group are the college crowd. You want to watch that because this is kind of the first time you've got some freedom on your own, and you've got to start to learn time management and things like this. That learning process is stressful, as well as understanding you're not always going to hit the marks because you're still kind of learning. And even afterwards, I miss the mark quite often, honestly. But that's the hectic schedule. That is the line of work I'm in as far as crisis goes. If a crisis happens, everything else gets pushed back.
Yeah. One thing that you mentioned before, it takes sometimes the bad days get longer and longer. One thing that helps a lot, like you said, just stopping and saying, well, what's the worst thing that could happen? There's this idea in mental health called ANTs, automatic negative thoughts.
Yep.
And so we use this a lot to say, okay, well, this happened. Okay, now what? And so automatic negative thoughts, they pop in and they pop in and they pop in and they become overwhelming. And then you get this sense of doom, right?
Right.
And so sometimes we'll use the phrase, well, hey, we got to squash those ants. So one of the ways to squash them is to stop and say, okay, what is the worst thing that could happen?
Exactly.
All right, I'm running late for this meeting. I'm going to be late. I'm going to walk in. They're going to look at me. I'm going to walk to my seat. I'm going to say sorry. And then maybe I'll get in trouble. Maybe I won't. But I'm going to live. Right. I have survived every single bad day that I have ever come through. And I can make it through this. It may get uncomfortable. I can do uncomfortable things. It may be hard. Right. I can do hard things. But I have to get through this moment, and I've gotten through every single moment up until this point. So I can get through this moment too. It's really hard though when you're in that moment. And so I think remembering those self-care elements help you realize, okay, breathe. Right. I'm okay.
This is temporary.
This is temporary.
Yes, it's temporary. Mm-hmm. But, right. And it's wanting... You need to recognize when, okay, this is not temporary. Mm-hmm. You want to watch for things where you start to pull away. Mm-hmm. And in this topic and other topics, you'll hear me probably talk a little bit more about when we start to isolate, when we start to pull away from friends, family, things like that. For me, that's a big indicator for a lot of things. So when I do my crisis assessments, it's one of the things I'm looking for is this person starting to isolate? So you want to watch for that. And if you've got that persistent, extreme anxiety, because like you said, you get embarrassed by the moment and then it goes and you go on. But for some, it doesn't go. It stays, and it haunts them, even after the meeting. And they persistently are apologetic for being late, when they should really just, you say it once, you apologize, no harm, no foul. Move on.
Well, it's so funny that you say that, because I'm thinking back all the times that I've been, super embarrassed, right? And there have been a lot of times where I've been super embarrassed. But I can vividly remember certain things that I've done. But if I stopped, I can't remember a lot of things that other people have done around me. And so you remember the things that happened to you, but you don't always really remember the embarrassing thing that, so-and-so did. And so that's so true, because, I'm thinking, everybody's going to notice, or everybody's going to remember.
Right.
They might for the day.
Or even that moment, and they're moving on to the next topic. But you're right. Mm-hmm. The person... in that moment, it gets stuck. That thought gets stuck there, and the ants creep in, and it just stays there. And then you lose being present, because if you go to a meeting and you're late for the meeting, it's like, oh my God, I'm late, and my boss is over there. They're looking at me, and you've missed 15 minutes, 20 minutes, maybe even the whole meeting, because you've been worried about, I've been late. Now I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm going to try to come up with an answer or a good excuse for why I was late.
And maybe the people are thinking about you, and maybe they're not thinking about you at all.
But you know what? That's so true. More often than not, they're not thinking about you. They're moving on to the next topic. And but we feel we're so much in that spotlight at that moment.
Just that hyper-awareness.
That hyper-awareness for that moment. And that is part of the anxiety, part of the fear of performance in front of people.
So what you said about pulling away, I think it's so true, because that sense of belonging is vital for that sense of stability. So even if things are going wrong, if I know I belong, if I know I'm a part of something, if I know that somebody cares about me, it brings a sense of gravity to the situation, a sense of safety. And that's why I love it when I come on college campuses. I love it when I come on school campuses, and there's this sense of community.
Yes.
There's events and clubs and activities and things to do. And the local universities around this area, they understand that, and they take it to the next level.
They do.
They bring such a sense of, you belong here and come be a part of this. And that's why I love it whenever I come onto campuses and I see that engagement, because that's such a protective factor for mental health.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Being involved in whatever community it is. And college campuses are their own little communities, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. So watch out for those things growing on you,
Mm-hmm.
those ants, those negative thoughts coming in there. Because, we talk about what you can do, with simple bad days. Take a break.
Mm-hmm.
Go for a walk. Yeah, but my schedule is so big. Take a break.
Yeah.
Breathe. Maybe look at that schedule and see if you can cancel one or postpone one so that you can take a moment to breathe. And practice some gratitude. Give yourself forgiveness for being late. It's like, I try not to be late for things, but it happens. And if it becomes a consistent pattern, that might be something to take a look at. But, remember that. Talk to a friend. Reach out to a friend if you've had a bad day and talk about what you're thinking. Hey, this is what happened today. Does it sound like I'm crazy, or does it make sense? I know you and I consult with each other on certain things from time to time. So,
well, and there's this, if you go to school and you take a class on psychology, one of the first things you learn is Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right?
Correct.
So you have this, it's really almost like the food pyramid. It's a triangle. And at the very bottom is those basic needs. And you have to meet the basic needs first. And so it's sleep, it's nutrition, right? It's those pivotal things that if you're not taking care of those things, the other things are not going to remain stable, even if they were stable at some time. And so taking a breath, going outside, going for a walk, making sure that you're getting enough food, making sure that you're getting enough sleep. And I'm the worst about scrolling on my phone at night because my brain needs a break. But really putting your phone down and resting your brain, finding places to decompress.
Right. Get off the computer, get away from that for a while so you can start to rest, start to wind down. People think that the doom scrolling is a way to wind down. Well, that's how I wind down. It's like, well, not really. Your brain isn't shutting off. You need
still
the
firing.
brain to shut off, right? But yeah, it's so important to be able to take that breath. And you talk about with Maslow's hierarchy of needs, those basic needs. For a lot of the folks that listen on college campuses and things like this, they're just starting out. So all those basic needs were provided by mom and dad in a nice structured environment. Now you're out on your own. You've got to create your own structure. Now, you can mirror that structure that came from mom and dad, or it's like, no, I don't want to do that. I'm going to do my own. You can do that too, but do you have a structure and a schedule, and how do you maintain that, and making sure your basic needs are being met? Now that's all up to you. The parenting part is now in your hands because you're going to be autonomous. So how do I make sure I'm getting my basic needs? How am I making sure that my meals are being met? And it's not just like Snickers and coffee to get you through college, So watching for that kind of thing, excuse me. But if it gets to a point where it's bleeding into a mental health crisis, find somebody, and it can be a very close friend, doesn't have to be a counselor, but if you need it, most college campuses have a student center with college counselors available to them who specialize in working with the college communities, because that does take a bit of finesse, understanding you're trying to be autonomous. You're also in a new environment that is kind of its own little culture. It somewhat mirrors what goes on in the general populace, but college campuses have their own little thing, and how to navigate that. They understand that, and the pressures of academia on top of day-to-day kinds of things. So you want to find somebody who's listening to you empathically, and that can provide support. Now, if you're that other person, that helper, that friend, you want to be the person who listens, that provides the support. So you're never alone, whether it's a bad day or whether it's a mental health crisis. So bad days, are normal part of life. Not every day is going to be fantastic, but we've got mental health crises that they often need attention and need to get that professional help where needed. So bad days come and go, but if you know someone who's facing more, it's okay to ask for help. And I think for many years, people have seen asking for help as a sign of weakness. And especially if you're trying to break out on your own, well, that means I failed. No. The opposite is actually true. That's a myth. It's not weakness. It's not failure. Asking for help is actually a sign of strength, because it takes courage to say, hey, I'm not doing so good today, and I need to talk about that. So just saying that to somebody, making it out loud, makes it very real.
And it shows a sense of vulnerability, but I think a lot of us are not as okay as we put out there. And part of that is, like you said, feeling uncomfortable to share a weakness or what you think is a weakness. But also not knowing what is the baseline for what is healthy. I think a lot of us just assume, well, this is just how it feels to be in college. This is just how it feels to be on my own. And maybe, and maybe not. Maybe this is how it feels. And also there's a mental health crisis going on. And maybe you just don't know the difference, because how do you know what everyone else is feeling? So having that sense of connection to where you can be open and honest and share how you're feeling with someone you trust, and maybe someone you trust as a friend, maybe someone you trust as a counselor.
Right.
Maybe it's a professor, and saying, this is where I'm at, and I don't know if this is okay or not, but this is how I feel. And having the people around you who you trust step in and say, I got you.
Yeah.
Let me help you. And some of that is mental health, and some of it, we'll go later in the season talking about nutrition, talking about sleep, talking about coping strategies, but also talking about finances.
Right.
I think for a lot of young adults and even high school students, when they start their first job, they have this sense of well, I've never had to do these things on my own.
Exactly.
And they don't know how to budget. And that money
Right.
goes really fast. And so part of adulthood is kind of being your own case manager, making sure that you have all of your medical appointments taken care of, making sure that you have all of your time management, your finances, your nutrition. There's a lot of pressure that's thrust on you all at once.
Right.
And it's okay to not know how to do the things you've never done before.
Absolutely. And, that's... we learn, we focus a lot on the things in academia that, they're important to know, the theories and baselines, but we've forgotten some of the basics, like budgeting, cooking. Because there used to be, back in my day, have to throw that out there, there used to be an a class on economics. So basically budgeting. It's a fancy term. Yes, there was the larger, more...
Did you take it in high school?
Took it in high school.
Yeah.
And, what was it called? But anyway, you learn how to cook, and you learn how to sew, you learn how to do various things. They used to have typing. It's now called keyboard, if you're doing that. Yes, right? So they used to have those classes, and a lot of that has gone away.
So did you have a typing class that you had to take?
I did not take the typing class. It did not fit in my schedule. I was doing some other computer stuff back then. I was working on computers. So,
but they taught you how to cook, and they taught you those basic skills.
Learn those basic skills, which we kind of miss these days, And I had read somewhere at one point they were talking about bringing that stuff back.
Well, and I think like what you said before, feeling like a failure, if you've never learned these skills, how would you know these skills?
Exactly.
And you have to give yourself that grace. Okay, I identify that this is an area where maybe I could grow, so let me do that.
Right.
And I think sometimes we just get stuck as this is an area where I need to grow, and I'm a failure because I'm not strong here.
Right.
And getting past that idea, that negative thought of you're a failure because you can't do it. No, you haven't tried. You haven't started. Give yourself that grace to be a beginner.
Exactly. We all start somewhere, and we all sometimes stumble. We pick ourselves back up, and we learn from those mistakes. And that's kind of the fallacy of social media. You see all the good stuff. You don't realize it took them 27 takes to get that one shot, that perfect shot. But we only see the quote-unquote perfection, and it's just not realistic.
So understanding the difference between I'm having a bad day and I'm having a bad day and I think that I need some help. Understanding those differences really is as simple as I've done all the things that I know to do,
Right.
and I'm not feeling better. So now let me ask for help. And Kirk, there's a lot of resources in the community that
Absolutely.
are there.
So we got our crisis line number at Peace River Center. So locally, that's 863-519-3744. That's our emotional support line. It's available 24/7, so people can call that. They can text in there as well, so they don't have to actually talk to somebody. They can just type it on their little smartphones and talk with us through that methodology. There's also, if things get even more serious, there's 988, which is the lifeline for those that are feeling probably a little more suicidal in nature. And we'll definitely talk more about that topic later this season.
Thank you so much for joining us for Finding Your Balance, and we look forward to next time.
Excellent. Thank you.